News Talk ZB Weather Watch 24/7 with Panasonic heat pumps. Whatever the weather, you're in control. For the Manukau and Waitemata harbours, variable 5 knots, an easterly of 10 coming in this afternoon, rising to 15 this evening. Hauraki Gulf, variable 5, a southeasterly of 10 developing this morning, and then rising to easterly 15 this afternoon and to 20 this evening. Bream Head to Cape Colville, easterly 10, but southeast 15 about the channel, rising to 15 but 20 about the channel tonight. The next high tide for Auckland is 4:45 this evening, and for Onehunga it's 8 o'clock tonight. Partly cloudy for Auckland today with areas of morning fog. That should have lifted. Isolated showers developing this afternoon with an easterly, high 18, dropping back to 12 overnight tonight. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with the chance of a shower and a high of 17. Right now 14.
Talk back with Chris Hipkins on Kerre Woodham Mornings with pinnaclelife.co.nz. Easy online life insurance. Call 0800 80 1080. News Talk ZB.
Good Lord, I think I've just managed to get the earphones in the nick of time, so I'm going to be able to hear your calls when you call in to talk to the Leader of the Opposition, Chris Hipkins, who's in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us. You've been on a charm offensive up and down the country.
Well, I guess you could call it a charm offensive. It's sort of more a listening offensive, really. You know, you lose an election, you've got to get out there and talk to people and hear what they've got to say.
Well, that's the thing. It's listening.
Absolutely. And, you know, my old friend Mike Moore, the late, great Mike Moore, used to quip, and I thought it was quite a good quip, actually, though. No one ever listened their way out of a vote. You can talk your way out of a vote, but no one ever listened their way out of a vote. And I think it's quite true. You know, when you lose an election, you've got to take some time to get out there and listen to people and understand, particularly from those people who voted for us in 2020, but then didn't in 2023, what made the difference.
Yeah. Because I think with yours it was a double whammy in that you're party faithful, the ones who will always vote Labour, always. Some of them found themselves voting Green because they were so cross that you'd wasted your mandate. And then there was the middle ground going, oh no, they've gone way too far. How do you appease the hard left Labourites as well as get the votes of the centre ground back?
I think ultimately people vote on values. I mean, they do vote on specific policies for sure, but more than that, they vote on values. And you know, there's a lot of common ground that we can find there. We're never going to please everybody on the, you know, on the core kind of party activists, but we're also never going to please everybody. You know, one of the things about politics is you can't please all of the people all the time. It's just an absolute impossibility. Yeah, well, you're certainly not people who call into talkback, but no. But you can't please all of the people all of the time.
No. But I mean, the one thing, and I'm not going to harp back because, you know, I've said to Christopher Luxon, I don't want to hear about the previous government for much longer, you know, like already, you know, now you're on your own.
Gosh, then he'd have nothing to talk about.
No, did leave quite the mess. But at the same time, I don't, you know, now you've got to look forward as well. But I did feel like, do you think you've had a change in and of yourself as to why you lost? Because on election night you didn't. It was almost like a telling off to the nation for not voting for you.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, that
was the way it came across. Like, I cannot believe you listed all the things you'd done, but you've been voted out.
We also acknowledge that New Zealanders had voted for change as well, and that means that we have to change too. I mean, the 2026 election campaign is not going to be a rerun of the 2023 election campaign. People voted to change in 23. That means by 26 we have to have changed as well. So that's what we're, you know, in the process of doing now.
Yes, I mean, you're very bullish. You think you can make this a one-term coalition government.
Well, I think if you look at all of the promises they made, and they haven't really delivered on any of them, it's a chaotic government that's fundamentally taking the country backwards. You know, I've said where they're doing things that we agree with, we'll support it. You know, I know granny flats is a big debate here. You know, if there are things that we can do to make it easier to do sensible things, then we will support those. So, you know, I'm open to those discussions.
How are they taking the country backwards?
Well, when you're borrowing $12 billion more, that's more money than Grant Robertson borrowed in any of his budgets except for 2020. Now, 2020 was at the height of the pandemic, but Nicola Willis is borrowing more money than we ever did other than in 2020. If you look at the deficits that she's running, if you took out the wage subsidy, the small business resurgence payment, and the what was the other one called, the resurgence payment, those three big ones where basically the money was the government was giving the money out to businesses. If you took those out, the current deficits that the government are running are bigger than any deficits we ever ran.
And you don't think that they would be running deficits if it hadn't been for your last 6 years.
Well, if you give away $14 billion in tax cuts and then another $3 billion in tax cuts for landlords, then when you're borrowing $12 billion extra, you're borrowing to pay for those things.
You agreed with tax cuts the last time we chatted.
I do think that bracket adjustments,
and that's what they were.
Yeah, but there's a time. You've got to pick your timing, and doing it at a time when inflation is high, and when government, revenue is declining because of a downturn in the economy, it's the worst time to do it.
But then you've got people who have never been hard up before suddenly finding themselves incredibly hard up because of the tax brackets and because of the galloping inflation.
And unfortunately, the tax cuts that the government are delivering is going to make that worse, because ultimately, if you look at the extra costs people are going to face, it's doing nothing to tackle those things, and potentially isn't keeping inflation higher for longer, which means interest rates stay higher for longer, which means the cost of living continues to be a problem. Reserve Bank has said what the three or four big things are that are keeping interest rates higher at the moment. It's increasing rates, it's increasing insurance payments, it's increasing rents, and then, of course, that leads to increasing interest rates. And those are the things that are really biting into Kiwi families. The current government's budget does nothing to address any of those. In fact, it makes them worse.
The unintended consequences of your, landlords' bills and looking after renters meant that there were fewer rental properties on the market.
That's not true.
That's done a lot.
But that's actually not true.
Rents have stabilised just in the last few months.
Well, that's absolutely not true. Actually, we were building more new houses.
No, I'm talking about rentals.
But it's the same thing. It's ultimately it's a question of how many houses there are in the market. And we had building and construction booming. Building and construction sector has collapsed in the last 6 months.
I don't have time to ring in, says Ben. I'd like to ask Chris Hipkins how he plans on getting support back. As a Labour voter, I jumped ship as months in Auckland lockdown sent me into thousands of dollars of mortgage arrears and lost income, all to rid ourselves of COVID that we all got anyway. It's going to take a hell of a lot of change to get my support back. That Auckland lockdown, I know it didn't affect the rest of the country, but you have no idea.
It was a huge contributor to the big loss in support that we experienced here in Auckland. There's no question about that. If you look at, it's a really hard one to argue about, though, because you're arguing against a hypothetical. So the hypothetical was, if we hadn't done that, if we had just let COVID spread through the country before we got the vaccination rates to the levels that we did, what would have happened? We know that the hospitals would have been much more overwhelmed. There would have been a lot more people who would have died from COVID than did. But that's a hypothetical because, of course, it didn't happen because of the things that we did. And look, Auckland took one for the team. There's no question about that. It was bloody hard for Auckland.
You don't know because you never came here.
Well, no.
Nobody came here.
When Auckland was locked down, we did. And I came to Auckland straight after the lockdowns had finished. But yes, I absolutely... I totally get that it was really, really hard for Auckland.
I'm not entirely sure you do. I think it's a bit like being in Canterbury when people say I empathise, about the quakes and having to live with the ongoing quakes. Until you've lived it, you don't know.
I think that's true. Absolutely true.
Craig, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Hipkins.
I've got my headphones on.
It's okay.
You sort of went on saying how these tax cuts are inflationary. What's the difference between that then and raising the minimum income, making the student wage equal to the minimum income when it comes to inflationary? Labor was very happy in raising minimum incomes, which is inflationary to employers. They obviously had to put their rates up. Student wages went up to the same thing, but giving middle New Zealand taking less of their money is inflationary. I don't get your logic.
So, the economists will argue that an increase in the minimum wage isn't as inflationary as a tax cut is. So, tax cuts put a lot of extra stimulus into the economy. So, you're talking about, $14 billion odd goes into the economy from the income tax cuts that the government have put out. Increasing the minimum wage would increase, stimulus in the economy by a very small fraction of that. So, tax cuts result in relatively small amounts of money going to quite a lot of people, which the cumulative effect of which is that more money flows into the economy and therefore more, more interest, more inflation, and therefore the Reserve Bank will keep interest rates higher for longer.
But at the same time, it's not just the minimum wage being raised, is it, Craig? You've also got other people saying, well, if their wage is going up, mine needs to as well.
Well, I had to, with my staff, but I didn't have anyone on minimum wage. I always paid above. But because the minimum wage went up, I had to suddenly give my guys more money to keep it relative. And, of course, it's inflationary. And, you can go to whatever economist you like to get the answer you like. But the reality is, Labour's policies have put this country in the stook, and our grandchildren are going to suffer for it.
I mean, ultimately, I think the thing that drives wage pressure is inflation. So if people are seeing all their costs going up, then they're going to be asking for bigger pay increases in order to meet those extra costs. So if we get the inflation under control, then the demand for wage growth is less, because one of the, I have sat on the other side of the bargaining table plenty over the last 6 years. And what those who are doing the bargaining will say is, our costs have gone up by X%, our wages need to go up by at least that amount. So if you get the costs, not growing as fast as they have been, then that will help businesses, because the pressure for wage increases will be less.
We'll take a short break. News Talk ZB, it's 10:17.
Flu vaccinations are available now at Life Pharmacy. Book online at lifepharmacy.co.nz or visit your local Life Pharmacy today.
Demazin Original Cold and Flu Relief Day and Night Tablets contain pseudoephedrine for the temporary relief from colds and flu symptoms. It's a pharmacy-only medicine, so ask for it at the counter. Stop the snot with Demazin. Always read the label. Use only as directed. Incorrect use may be harmful. If symptoms persist, see your healthcare professional. Night tablets may cause drowsiness. Do not drive or operate machinery if affected. Avoid alcohol. Radiant Health, Auckland.
Rental properties. Things happen to other people's stuff and other people. With State, landlords now get up to $5 million legal liability cover for mishaps to someone else or their property. State Landlords Insurance. Policy criteria, T's and C's apply.
Now you don't need a renovation when your walls need insulation. Relax, it's Insole Max. No need for wall removal. He's got your council's approval. Relax, it's Insole Max. Filling walls across the nation with instant insulation. Relax, it's Insole Max. Relax, it's Insole Max.
When you sit on a stressless recliner, your whole body relaxes, as if you're floating on air. And right now, there's huge savings on stressless recliners at the Stressless Relax Your Body sale. Stressless, exclusive to Danske Møbler Furniture.
Sometimes we don't eat for 2 or 3 days. I'm TJ from World Vision, and that's Nyadwer, a South Sudanese child struggling to provide for her siblings. Text food to 5055 to donate $3 now.
Need new tyres? Continental Cars stock a wide range for all makes and models of vehicles and motorcycles. Need something bespoke? Let Continental Cars source what you're after at continentalcars.co.nz. Continental Cars, driving excellence.
Auckland, we've got the biggest tower in the country, the biggest sports stadium, the biggest council, the biggest volcano, the biggest Polynesian population, the biggest lantern festival, the biggest school, the biggest airport, not to mention the biggest number of houses. And at 20 tons, Metropolitan Rentals have the biggest furniture truck for hire in Auckland City.
The Metropolitan Rentals. The Metropolitan Rentals.
Get inside the game with Rugby Direct.
This week on Rugby Direct, the Blues and Chiefs advance to the Super Rugby final. We look at the path to getting there and how the match will be won on Saturday night. The All Black squad days away. We look at the possible selections, and Super Rugby chair Kevin Malloy joins us on Rugby Direct.
Rugby Direct. Listen now on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Powered by News Talk ZB.
News Talk ZB. We have the Leader of the Opposition, Chris Hipkins, in the House, just talking two different ways of getting to the same place, really, isn't it? You know, people wanting the same result. We don't want people suffering. We want people in decent homes. We want kids wanting to go to school. We want better educational outcomes. How do you get there? We don't want people being robbed on the daily either.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I think there's different values that underpin a lot of the political debate that we have. I mean, on crime, for example, I would say that we should focus on preventing crime in the first place, as much as we focus on punishing people after the fact. And if we did more of the crime prevention work, then we would have fewer people to punish. So
I totally agree with that, but you can't just give the gangs a seat at the table without them earning it.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, but I think there was a bit of hyperbole. I mean, I looked at Prime Minister, when I was Prime Minister, at stopping all the funding for gangs as well. And one of the things that sort of made me step back a little bit from that was that some of the most effective drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs, for example, targeted at gang members, are run by former gang members, and we'd be pulling the pin on those. I think, we should focus on outcomes rather than necessarily being kind of sloganistic in the way we approach it.
I think you can do both, though. I don't think there's anything wrong at all. I mean, absolutely, the whole point of crime reduction is never having it happen in the first place. But you don't give kids a free pass either. No,
actually, and that is an area where I think we were a bit too slow. As towards the end of the time that I was Prime Minister, I put a bill before the House that really changed the consequences around youth offending. But
that was the Ramrade bill.
That was the Ramrade bill. It's going through now.
Yeah.
But actually, what I was focused on there is consequences that work. You can have consequences that just make the situation worse. So if you take a young person who's 12, 13 years old,
put them in jail.
Bang them in a jail, you're actually going to make that problem worse. If you have consequences for them that work, i.e. the things that pull the families in and say to the families, what are we doing to deal with this dysfunction? Because often it's the family that's dysfunctional. That's the sort of stuff we've got to focus on.
As well as consequences. Ross, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning. A question for Mr. Hipkins. You cannot keep on pushing costs onto people that are in business. It just does not work. A lot of people cannot pass their costs on to their customers. I'm in a situation where I know of property owners in West Auckland that are getting 80% of the rent that they were in the 80s. Now, you might find that hard to believe, but I can take you to a few properties and I can show you that. And that has come about because of the decline in shopping centres, the decline in way people shop, but the costs get put onto them either through government charges, insurance, rates, minimum wages. All these costs get passed on, and a lot of people do not have the ability to pass those costs on to the public. So they suffer in silence, and they gradually accept a less and a less of an income themselves, and they're between a rock and a hard place.
So I assume that the property owners that you're talking about are commercial property owners rather than residential property owners, is that right?
Commercial property owners, yes.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Look, we should always be looking at how we can do things better in that space. We reintroduced commercial property depreciation as a response following COVID-19, and the current government have just taken that away again. So, we should always keep those policies around how we can support businesses at the productive end of the economy. We should always be looking at how we can do more in that space. I think one of the challenges we've got is that in the property area, all of the incentives support those owning residential properties, and there are probably less incentives to support those who own commercial properties.
Just a quick one from Jill. Our supermarket wage costs, extra leave and wage increases went up 44% over the last 6 years.
Well, supermarkets are making over $1 million a day in excess profit, so I'm not that sympathetic to the supermarkets, to be honest.
News Talk ZB 1025.
This Volunteer Week, it's important to remember that there are 594 volunteer fire brigades across Aotearoa, your local community being vital to them all. So Fire and Emergency thanks all our volunteers, their whānau and employers who stand by them. You all change lives for the better.
First Mortgage Trust delivered an annualised 7.29% per annum pre-tax return for the last quarter. Pretty impressive for a conservative investment. Past performance isn't a reliable indicator of future performance. First Mortgage Managers Limited is the issuer. For the PDSs, visit fmt.co.nz.
The DVS difference at your place this winter? Temp Events. A temp event is an exclusive DVS innovation that helps warm the air coming into your home. It's a great way to ventilate your bedrooms on those cold winter nights. With filtered fresh air in, stale air out. A drier home is a healthier home. So say yes to the people who know ventilation best. DVS. dvs.co.nz.
The heart of a healthy home. DVS.
is where the heart is and where your older loved ones should be able to stay. Private Care NZ can support older family members, enabling them to live independently in the comfort of their own home. The highly trained professionals from Private Care NZ can tailor the services they offer to fit your needs. There are many care levels to choose from. Live life your way with Private Care NZ. Contact Private Care NZ today on 0800 555588.
For the latest international rugby news, you'll find it on News Talk ZB and iHeartRadio, thanks to Access Solutions. For specialist access equipment, including aluminium scaffolding, scissor lifts and boom lifts, visit accesssolutions.co.nz. Bringing you all the news from on and off the field. Keep up to date with the latest from all the top rugby playing nations. News Talk ZB's coverage of international rugby with Access Solutions, elevating you and your business to a higher level.
Get the sharpest price at All Trades Electric Tools.
Business is booming at All Trades Electric Tools, your Henderson Power Tool Centre. And that's why All Trades need a service technician to join the team. You must have experience in repairing battery and electrical tools and appropriate certification. If you'd enjoy working full-time 8 till 3 weekdays, phone All Trades on 8375 115.
Get the sharpest price at All Trades Electric Tools.
Auckland, 89.4 FM. Kerre Woodham Mornings. Engaging conversation on News Talk ZB.
Man, I know things are tight for media companies. You think we'd be able to get some new headphones, wouldn't you?
I'm
rubbish?
I'm sort of working on it. I can mostly hear what people are saying.
God. Right. Frank, you want to ask about tax policy?
Yeah, yep. I do. It's about capital gains, but first I'd like to say thank you for not putting up, not the politicians' wages, not selling off the sovereign citizens' owned assets, etc., and the GST. But other nations, sovereign nations, have a go at the capital gains, and they put it back into the infrastructure. Why we use gutless wonders talking about doing it and then piked out about it?
So on the issue around tax, I mean, I was pretty clear when I became Prime Minister. I became Prime Minister partway through a parliamentary term, or towards the end of a parliamentary term, and I didn't want to do things that we had said that we were not going to do, and we had already said that we weren't going to do capital gains tax or wealth tax in the last term. And so I thought that I should honour the commitment that my predecessor Jacinda had made. I don't think you should change leader and then do a whole lot of things that you said you weren't going to do before the last election. But I do think the fairness of our tax system does need to be looked at again. If you look at New Zealand's tax system and the overall tax take that government gets in New Zealand compared to Australia, the UK, the US, we place a much heavier share of that burden on salary and wage earners than those other countries do. And we need to look at how we can rebalance that. And, there are some people making a lot of money out of, asset accumulation, the value of assets growing, and we don't tax that the way Australia, the US, the UK, Canada, and other countries do.
Just on the supermarkets, please ask Hipkins to retract that incorrect $1 million profit claim. The Comcom have admitted it was incorrect. Is he referring to all supermarkets combined throughout the country? Surely that would not be one supermarket. Very inflammatory and misleading.
Well, no, that is the Commerce Commission's view of what the excess profits that supermarkets across the country are making relative to what a regular level of profit would be.
What is excess profit?
So that means you take what is a reasonable level of profit. I mean, businesses should be profitable, and then you figure out what that reasonable level of profit is, and then what's the profit they're making in addition to that.
Yeah, I've always wondered what that might be if people are willing to. This is interesting because this is something I really wanted to do the last time you came in, and I didn't mention it beforehand and should have. On his way out of the radio station, can you get him to walk down Queen Street and have a look at what the government did to it? It's. Have you walked through Queen Street?
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this earlier on this morning. So now that
from Sky City to here, it's just...
Now that I don't have the diplomatic protection, I have been down Queen Street quite a lot just recently, including at night time. Yeah. And I can totally understand why people don't feel safe walking down Queen Street. I think
it's just the...
It's a less sociable place than it used to be. And I think, how do we solve that? Well, I think a much stronger police presence, even for a short period of time, even for 6 months, is probably one of the things that should happen. An on the beat, on the street, visible, active police presence in the CBD in Auckland is absolutely justified at this point.
But you've got the mad, the bad and the sad all still housed in these places that you put them with nowhere to go, nothing to do.
I mean, and that social dysfunction didn't just come from nowhere.
Of course it didn't,
So,
but concentrating people in one area is always going to cause major issues for those people, many of whom, the lovely hairdresser barber who's been there for 30 years, he's at the end of his tether. He's been, bashed for what's in his till, and for some poor sad people to sniff the hairspray.
Yeah, I think we need to, again, it comes back to focusing on building more houses for vulnerable people and not putting them all in the same place. I totally agree with that. They need to be spread out, across the community.
Yeah. But, you really do have to have a look to just see.
Oh, no, I have.
How
I've
desperately sad it is.
I've spent quite a bit of time in central Auckland by myself, just walking through to get a feel for the place. And I completely understand why people don't feel safe in the Auckland CBD.
And just how sad it is for those business owners who are desperately trying to make a buck.
But it's also a vicious circle, because what happens is, because people don't feel safe, there's fewer people in the CBD, and therefore you end up with the people who are making people feel less safe being more dominant and more visible, and therefore fewer people come, and therefore that just continues to it sort of feels like parts of the CBD, and it's not all, but parts of the CBD seem to be locked in that spiral.
News Talk ZB, it is 10:32.
News Talk ZB Auckland. Time saver traffic.
Clean it the easy way with Wet and Forget Rapid Multi-Packs. Good morning. Now it's still very slow. Drury through to Papakura. Then you got a nice run heading towards the city after that. The northern northbound moderate over the Harbour Bridge. Citybound is flowing well. No delays on the northwestern or the southwestern. Save up to 32% on Wet and Forget Rapid in store or online. Ivanka Zonich for Time Saver Traffic.
Chemist Warehouse has always offered free prescriptions and will proudly continue to do so, because all Kiwis deserve great savings now more than ever. So for your prescriptions, come home to Chemist Warehouse, always here for you.
Hey, it's Heidi here from one of your locally owned Fresh Choice supermarkets, here to deliver some fresh deals just for you. Like fresh cut broccoli, only $1.90 each. Deal ends Sunday at Fresh Choice. Value that's right by you.
You've worked hard for your money and built your nest egg. Now it's time to generate some strong passive income. Others may offer you more, but at what risk? General Finance has generous fixed deposit rates of up to 8% per annum. You can invest for any period between 3 and 60 months. You've worked hard for your money. Now make your money work hard for you. Deposit rates, credit rating and product disclosure statement are available at generalfinance.co.nz.
Join the Auckland Philharmonia in July for an exhilarating and evocative performance of the much-loved orchestral showpiece Scheherazade. Inspired by the Arabian Nights, it's a masterpiece of vivid musical storytelling that is bound to enrapture. The New Zealand Herald premiere series Scheherazade, 7:30pm, Thursday the 4th of July at the Auckland Town Hall. Book now at aucklandphil.nz.
Introducing the Advantage range of small homes from Versatile. Whether you're looking to bring ageing parents closer, keep young adults longer, or are just starting out, an Advantage range home gives you the comfort and quality you expect from Versatile. Designed to be built on the back of your land, these 1 to 3 bedroom homes are stylish, contemporary, and a great way to create lasting value. View our designs online or call 0800 Versatile to talk to us today.
Talk ZB headlines.
With Blue Bubble taxis, it's no trouble with a Blue Bubble. Chris Luxon has a busy day in Tokyo today on a trade trip. He'll sign a Rocket Lab launch agreement and visit supermarkets to browse Kiwi brands. He has a bilateral meeting with Japan's Prime Minister tomorrow. An engine fire on a Virgin Australia flight from Queenstown to Melbourne that forced an emergency landing in Invercargill last night was probably due because of bird strike. The 67 passengers and 6 crew spent the night in Invercargill. Public Service Minister Nicola Willis has announced plans to introduce performance incentives for public sector CEOs. Labor's calling it a tone-deaf move after widespread public service redundancies. Meanwhile, Willis says the government walking back a hands-on approach to transgender participation in community sport isn't a back-down. Workplace Relations Minister Brooke Van Velden is defending a review of the Holidays Act, saying it's reductive to suggest it'll disproportionately affect women. An AUT construction expert says granny flats will still need to meet standards, even if plans to scrap red tape for small dwellings come into force. New Zealand tops the OECD rent chart and the tenancy law change that's coming. Read this and more from Property Insider at NZ Herald Premium. Back to Kerre Woodham.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It is 23 minutes to 11. Leader of the Opposition, Chris Hipkins, is in studio. A texter says, why has your party, Chris, turned against farmers in the farming community? You're just back from field days.
I am back from field days and it was great. We had some really positive conversations with farmers and I really value the work that farmers do. I absolutely, and as I said at field days, I think relationships between the farming community and the last government had really broken down at the end. And so I think that is something that we need to do some work on. We don't hate farmers. In fact, we really value the work farmers do.
That message really didn't get through.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. That message didn't get through. I do think that farming is going to face some big challenges in the next,
But they know that.
Exactly. And a lot of farmers are already well ahead of the curve in dealing with that. And I don't think we gave them enough credit for the fact that they're already doing a lot of stuff around sustainability, around tackling climate change that we haven't given them credit for. We're always looking at what the next step is, and I think the challenge with that, we always have to look at what the next step is, but you've actually got to give credit for the steps that have already been taken.
I think so, and I think certainly my perception, and it's not the nationwide perception, but my perception and the perception from a number of listeners and callers is that you don't give people enough credit. You don't give business enough credit for looking after their staff. You don't give farmers enough credit for looking after the environment. You don't give people enough credit for actually wanting the best, not just for themselves, but for each other.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I mean, I think the longer you're in government, the more defensive you become. And I think certainly in some of those areas, we become too defensive towards the end of our time in government. And, I think we should have a constructive working relationship with business. We should have a constructive working relationship with the farming community. And I think in government, you have to have a constructive working relationship even with the people who don't vote for you. You can't go into it thinking, I'm only going to have a good relationship with the people who vote for us. You have to be able to go into a room and say, well, I know you don't vote for me, but we've still got to work together.
And I know you can't have 1,000 different voices all coming at you. I get that. But when you've got people of the calibre of Sir Ian Taylor saying, look, we want to help, and just getting rebuffed and that wasn't just him. It gives a sense of a bunkered government that knows best.
Yeah, I mean, I had some really good conversations with Ian during the COVID period, and the suggestions that he was making, and I've had some really good conversations with him since then too. And I think he's a great New Zealander. That doesn't mean we're always going to agree, and it doesn't mean that always the ideas that he comes up with are going to be readily implementable. But that was a really tough period. The stuff that we were talking with him about around COVID isolation and so on, we did actually work with him to trial alternative ways of doing that.
Yeah, you did, but that it wasn't just from business. There was a real sense that government knows best, we'll do it, and almost the idea that you wanted to create a dependency on government.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I think there's some really good examples of where government and business can work hand in hand to the benefit of everybody.
I would have thought building houses would have been one of them.
Well, but building houses should absolutely be one of them. And
I've heard from so many in the building industry that they couldn't get meetings. It was just a completely closed shop.
Well, I mean, the contrast now, of course, is that you've got a government that says it wants to work with the housing sector but has collapsed it. So, I mean, I think...
My texters in the building industry aren't agreeing with you on that.
Well, building and construction activity has collapsed in the last 6 months.
It's because people have got no bloody money. bunged the economy.
Yeah, and the government pulling all the money out that we were spending in that sector is actually making that worse rather than better. I mean, the government driven house building program is grinding to a halt. The work on upgrading schools and hospitals is ground to a halt. Some of the big transport infrastructure projects have ground to a halt. And this is stuff that the government can control. So they're making this situation worse, not better at the moment. I hope that they will quickly actually start to get back to saying what they do want to do rather than the things that they don't want to do, so that people can then get on with it.
But there's a lot of disentangling that does have to be done.
Kerry, that's not true. So let's look at the school building projects. We were building new classrooms and upgrading classrooms in areas where schools were run down and needed to be upgraded, or where new classrooms were needed to cope with roll growth. The government's stopping all of that work to say, we're going to take another look at it.
Yes,
isn't going to make that problem go away. That work's still going to have to be done.
Yes, but as they pointed out, a number of them were bespoke, fancy schmancy, not, just one utilitarian design that could be replicated around the country.
And again, that's not true. I used to have sitting on my desk as Minister of Education the catalogue that I made the Ministry of Education do of the standard designs for new school buildings. Schools could go through that and pick which ones they wanted. They could change the colour, but by and large, the designs were standard.
The idea, too, of the modern learning environment that everybody said wouldn't work and hasn't, that's had to be, that was a whole lot of unnecessary work that was done that's going to have to be undone.
Well, the conception of the modern learning environment was actually the last national government, not what we did.
I was told by principals and teachers that they couldn't get funding unless they put in modern learning environments.
Well, no, we actually changed those. So those standard designs that I mentioned were designed to give schools the choice. So there were options there for whether they had single cell classrooms or whether they had more open spaces. The standard designs allowed for both of those things.
Right. When it comes to kaingora, have you done away with and agreed that let's just love them to death and they'll become better people, let's keep them in tenancies is not going to work?
If you're talking about tenancies, I think we need to think about how we manage that. So I was talking to a kaingora tenancy manager recently who said that for some of those tenants, it's very much where you put them matters a lot. So they have dealt with some of the antisocial behaviour from some of those tenants by moving where those tenants are, and the antisocial behaviour's gone away. So I think eviction should always be the last call. But it should be an option where people are repeatedly moved around, and no matter where you put them, they cause problems. Then I think, that's a bigger problem that we've got to deal with. We've also got to remember, where do they go once they're evicted?
Well, we've had this discussion, and it's they go into the motel where somebody is desperately waiting for a home. Just replace them, put them to the back of the queue.
Yeah, but the challenge is you end up with people on the streets. You end up with people living on the streets.
If you take somebody out of an emergency motel, put them into the trashed but now refurbished kaingora home that Chummy was in, Chummy can now go to the emergency housing.
And then you still have problems in emergency housing, which we clearly do have a lot of problems in emergency housing. Fundamentally, I think we've got to find ways of getting these people into an environment where they do have a stable accommodation, but where the antisocial behaviour stops. News
Talk ZB, it is 11:15.
The all-new Mahindra XUV 700 is the SUV with the engineering excellence to handle your family adventures and the grace, space, smarts and style to do it all in a little comfort. From $38,990, finance from 4.99%, terms at mahindra.co.nz.
Knowing your numbers with Xero means helping you understand your cash flow and knowing reporting's at your fingertips while on the go. It's also knowing you're the master of your vessel, the captain of your ship, the navigator of your life. I'm out of boat metaphors. Know your numbers with Xero. Try free for 30 days. Terms apply.
When you need to know something's hot. Oh, hot, far too hot. Or freezing. Or if you need it just right, you need the Temperature Shop. The Temperature Shop is a one-stop shop for all your temperature-related measurement devices. Thermometers, barbecue temperature probes, CO2 monitors, weather stations and much more. The Temperature Shop is the only place online to find a wide range of quality thermometer products. Be in complete control with temperature.co.nz.
Kia ora, I'm Sylvie, Chief Evangelist at MyHR. I'm here with MyHR client Josh Townsend, CEO of Zephyr Drinks. Josh, how has MyHR helped your growing business?
MyHR was a massive saviour for us in terms of managing our HR systems. It gave us confidence that all of our employment agreements were up to date, legally current, and were going to be updated when required. It also allowed us to integrate all onto one clean system and gives us access to anytime support, which is invaluable for a small, fast-growing business like ours.
Search myhr.works for more.
Designwarehouse.co.nz
Take advantage of scenic views and calming atmospheres with outdoor furniture from Design Warehouse. Create new memories around outdoor tables and chairs. Relax around the pool on daybeds and sun lounges. Visit Design Warehouse in Parnell or shop online and get free delivery Auckland-wide.
Designwarehouse.co.nz.
Tāmaki Makaurau is a beautiful place, and Auckland Council has plans to make it even better. By creating more ways for you to get around with new rail connections and convenient cycleways. By nurturing our natural spaces with more trees and a reimagined Myers Park. And by protecting our whenua with more reliable stormwater control. All of these things working together to grow an altogether greater Tāmaki Makaurau. Altogether greater.
Chris Hipkins taking your calls on 0800 80 1080 on Kerre Woodham Mornings with Pinnacle Life. Get a life insurance quote in just 30 seconds. News Talk ZB.
This is going to look attractive on the video, isn't it? As we're all scratching at our ears. Sorry about that. Rich, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
Oh, good.
Chris, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, my question for Chris, I guess for me, like, I voted for Labour in 2017. I voted for Labour in 2020. I thought you guys were doing all right through there. But I think in that last, up to the last election, I just kind of, I fell away from you. I just felt like the middle New Zealand was just forgotten about. You always see minimum wage kind of going up, and we don't dispute that. But it's just, this government's been in for about 6 months. So you guys have been in government, you were in government for 6 years. How are you going to get someone like me, and there's going to be a lot of other people in the same kind of mindset as myself, to get you to come back to you and vote for you again? Because I just kind of feel that you just didn't seem to care about us. It just seemed that middle New Zealand was just forgotten about, and I was just frustrated where here's a new government that are actually trying to, get us back on track. It's kind of like, how can I really take you guys seriously when you go look at your track record? How are you going to get someone like me to vote for you at the next election? Because people like middle New Zealand. Tell me that.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I mean, look, I think, saying we're going to get the country back on track is an easy slogan, but actually evidence suggests so far they're not having much progress, much success with that. I think what we have to do in the next couple of years is make sure that we are offering something different in 2026 to what the current government are offering, but also to what we offered last time. And for me, one of the most fundamental things, one of the reasons I'm in politics, one of the reasons I'm in the Labour Party, is I believe the notion, and really strongly in the notion, that people who are working hard every day should be able to get ahead. And I've met far too many Kiwis who are working really hard who feel like they can't get ahead. And that isn't necessarily new, but it's a problem that feels like it's getting worse and worse over several decades now. So a lot of people, working people, feel like they're not having the opportunity to buy their own home. Their hard work isn't paying enough for them to be able to give their kids the sort of future that they want to be able to give them. And so, as we focus on what are we going to offer at the next election, that's very much front of mind for me. How do we make sure that people feel like, through their own hard work, that they're actually getting ahead and creating a better life for themselves and their families? And it's going to require some new thinking on our part. We're going to have some new ideas.
It really is, because the last ones didn't work. The last 3 years, the first 3 years you were in a coalition government, and there was some new thinking, new ideas. It didn't work. Like, you promised the idea of, homes that would be readily available for hardworking Kiwis. You promised that child poverty would go down. All of those good things. And in fact, people just felt ripped off, I think, because it was overpromised and not delivered.
Yeah, I look back. I've looked back on the last 6 years. I look back on stuff that I'm, really proud of, and things that we didn't, targets we didn't hit, goals that we had that we didn't achieve. And we can't underestimate the fact that for 3 years of that 6 years, there was a huge disruption, and no one wants to talk about it anymore. And I saw you just rolling your eyes there, Kerre. But the reality is, COVID disrupted everything. If you're in a business and you say, how did the last 6 years go for us? Every one of them will tell you that COVID-19 disrupted everything.
Yes, but it didn't have to for as long as it did, especially in this country.
Well, if you wanted to avoid the huge number of avoidable deaths that we had around the rest of the world, then yes, it did.
It didn't. It did not have to go on that second year as long as it did. That is complete. Seriously.
The decisions around lockdowns and so on were directly related to vaccination. Once we got the country to a point where, COVID-19 could spread without huge, widespread death, then we were able to ease off and wind all of that back. But if we had done that before vaccination had been rolled out across the country, the results would have been similar. It would have all been in vain. The sacrifices people made would have all been in vain.
All the Warriors tickets in the world, we're not going to get some of the most vulnerable, in inverted commas, vaccinated. If you've visited the far north, the reason people live up there is so that they don't get swept up into government mandates and government dictates. They are off the grid and they want to stay that way. So we could still be in lockdown in Auckland and the vaccination rates would have stayed the same.
We got vaccination rates into sort of, I think it was 96% or 94% for adults having had 2 doses of the vaccination. It was one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, and it is one of the reasons why...
Eventually, after saying no thank you, we'll go to the back of the line.
It is... Well, we never said no thank you, we'll go to the back of the line. We said that we were going to roll out what was then the best available vaccine, rather than rolling out the ones that have had other problems.
Okay, if you're going to, no. I know this lovely 106-year-old man I know had COVID. Fit as a fiddle. Looks forward to seeing his 107th. He's still got his driver's license.
Yeah, but you can't just assume that's going to be the result for everybody.
No, it's not going to be the result.
And
of course
clear evidence from every other country around the world that had COVID spread like wildfire before there was a vaccination shows that it wasn't true.
Who live completely differently to the way we live, but nonetheless, we will argue this, and historians will argue for years to come. News Talk ZB 7 to 11.
At BNZ, we know in business, things can change quickly. One week you're slow and steady, the next you're booming. Whatever business you're in, no matter where you are in the country, BNZ's network of more than 350 business specialists have the expertise to help you navigate the ups and downs of running a business. Search BNZ Business Banking to find out more. Bank of New Zealand. Let's find a way.
Ever wanted to fight back against online scammers? Of course you have. And now, thanks to NetSafe, you can help make the internet a safer place using Rescam. NetSafe's AI bot that responds to scam emails for you, keeping the scammer tied up in a never-ending conversation. Clever, eh? Visit rescam.org to see how to forward your scam emails, then sit back, grab the popcorn and watch Rescam take up the cause. Use AI for good with rescam.org.
At Bunnings, we can help you cozy up your space this winter with the lowest prices on everything from rugs to heaters and lighting. Heat up the room with a click column heater, only $49. Cozy up your space with a Renaissance rug, $129. Or you could grab a fan heater, just $15. Will you find a competitor's lower price on the same stocked item available for same-day delivery or collection? We'll beat it by 15%. Conditions apply. See website for details. Lowest prices are just the beginning.
Tāmaki Makaurau is a beautiful place, and Auckland Council has plans to make it even better. By creating more ways for you to get around with new rail connections and convenient cycleways. By nurturing our natural spaces with more trees and a reimagined Myers Park. And by protecting our whenua with more reliable stormwater control. All of these things working together to grow an altogether greater Tāmaki Makaurau. Altogether greater.
Take advantage of scenic views and calming atmospheres with outdoor furniture from Design Warehouse. Create new memories around outdoor tables and chairs. Relax around the pool on daybeds and sun lounges. Visit Design Warehouse in Parnell or shop online and get free delivery Auckland-wide.
News Talk ZB. Oh, that's it, really? We don't agree on that much. We agree we want a better New Zealand.
Of course.
That's how we get there. But we do agree, too, that we need new headphones.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's time for News Talk ZB to splash out and get some new headphones.
Well, we're not Radio New Zealand. We don't get government grants.
In an interview where I'm saying that I'm out around the country listening to people, the video footage is going to show me having my hands over both of my ears as I try and stuff the earpieces into my ears so that I can hear what the callers are saying.
Look, I've got some sort of tick. Yeah. So, anyway, so what do you... We'll have, these are regular. So
absolutely.
Now, next time would be good to hear what you are going to do, because by that time you'll have formulated
Well, it depends how soon you want to get me back, Kerry. But, I mean, we've still got 2 years to go in this political term. So, during that time, we'll do policy development. But we're not in a position really to have a whole lot of new things, until we start getting towards the next election campaign. So, yeah.
So what will you do in the meantime?
Well, it's about listening and it's about engaging with new ideas. I think we do need some new ideas, and that's what we'll be working on. Yeah.
Okay. You chose this one?
Yeah, things can only get better.
Are you trolling National and the coalition government?
Well, it's a little bit of that, but also, the UK election is coming up, and it's looking very good for the Labour Party over in the UK at the moment. So there's hope. There's always hope, Kerry.
Chris Hipkins, Leader of the Opposition, nice to have you in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be back with more Talkback after the news at 11.